If I set the knob fully dry, the makeup gain still affects it. Why? Honestly, this is infuriating.
Let me see something really quickly. I've never thought about VSTs in this way, but it explains so much. So like a lot of VSTs basically have this problem then, because like the 1566 that this is emulated off of didn't even have dry wet. I think this whole might have the same problem. Like the fully affected signal will be quieter, but I would have to test it a lot. But that's actually interesting. Like it's not just compressors, it's like everything. I said that in relation to the Drake beef. I didn't know it was going to be in New Orleans. I didn't know Lil Wayne was in consideration. I was just like, it would be sick because context, but yeah.
Hi, and welcome back. A video popped into my feed a couple of weeks
No, I don't know what that is, bro.
back called "We've Been Doing Parallel Compression Wrong." I didn't entirely agree with everything in the video, but rather than pick it apart, I'm just going to set out what I think the issues are and how to work around them. For the developers, as well as the users.
Oh yeah, no, you know I gotta take notes on this hoe. I can't even lie to you, gang. Gotta pull out the old Notion pad. Anytime this nigga Dan Worrell about to say anything, bro, gotta pull that bitch out. Notion is cracked, gang.
Users. First of all, let's talk about the traditional method, with the compressor fed from an aux send. Here's a transfer graph in Plugin Doctor, as well as the users.
That sounds cool.
First of all, let's talk about the traditional method, with the compressor fed from an aux send. Here's a transfer graph in Plugin Doctor. This is what no compression looks like. Just a straight diagonal line from bottom left to top right, indicating that
sounds great.
The output level is exactly the same as the input level. Now here's a standard downwards compression transfer without makeup gain. No change below the threshold, but above the threshold the output gain increases more slowly than the input gain. Parallel compression means adding those two graphs together like this. Below the compressor threshold, the overall level is boosted by 6 dB as we're adding two copies of the same signal.
Okay, I'm with you so far. I feel like you're about to lose me though, for real.
But as the signal rises above the threshold...
Sort of guy, you have your notes out, watch them out. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Anytime you pull up, you got to take notes if you really want that information. They say you remember 50% more when you write it as opposed to when you don't type shit. So just take notes, type it, write it, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's a good way. It's a good way to get good at stuff.
The compressed half of the signal starts to become relatively quieter than the uncompressed half, and that level boost starts to taper away. Note, however, that the level boost never quite reaches zero, even at the highest input levels where we're smashing the signal really hard with the compressor. Adding the compressed signal makes the loudest peaks a tiny bit louder, and the quieter parts a lot louder, resulting in a pseudo upwards compression effect. The point is, however, it's all boost. When you push up that parallel compression fader, how are you supposed to know if it sounds better because of the compression or because it just got louder?
I do often wonder this. Is that the problem with parallel compression? I guess fundamentally, summation is the problem with parallel compression. I swear to God, if he says equalization is the solution, I will snap my laptop in half, bro. If he says anything about frequency masking, I might actually get upset.
And when you mute that parallel channel, is it worse because it's worse or just because it's quieter? Because literally, like, that's a thing. If two things are comparable, but one is louder, like if two pieces of audio are comparable in terms of quality and like skill or whatever the fuck, but like one is louder and one is quieter, human beings will always say the louder one is better. I wasn't lying about that. That's an actual phenomenon for human beings that we haven't gotten to the point of explaining, but I guess that's literally the problem. If you're using a console or a control surface, perhaps you'll be able to feather down the fader for the dry signal as you bring up the compression channel. But it's kind of impossible to do this accurately and repeatably.
Thank you. I thought I'd be thinking, am I bad? No, we're all crazy for even thinking this is an easy thing to do. Which is why I don't like using compression. Here's the reason for people who wonder why I say that. This is why.
Practical if you're sending multiple channels to the parallel compressor, and it doesn't help you if you're mixing with a mouse and keyboard. I do have a strategy to deal with this issue, but I'm going to park the question for now and come back to it later, after a little discussion about wet-dry knobs. If you're processing a single channel or bus, these seem to solve that problem. Using a crossfade means that as you add more compressed signal, the dry signal drops in level, thus maintaining a constant combined output loudness.
Oh, I never knew what crossfade did. That's fire. I need to write that down. So like, I don't know how to say that though. X fade, because that's what they like label it as. Cross, gain balance between wet and dry. I need to study about that. That's actually pretty cool. I just literally never knew what that was.
And allowing you to judge the change properly. Well,
no, why don't you just go? I don't mean that disrespectfully, but like, no, I'm not doing that. My bad. No, I'm not doing that.
It does if the dry wet mix knob has been implemented correctly, which unfortunately this one hasn't.
Oh,
Judge the change properly. Well, it does if the dry wet mix knob has been implemented correctly, which unfortunately this one hasn't. How can you get that wrong, you may ask?
yeah, those stock mix knobs are insane. You can parallel process every single effect in FL Studio with like a knob that's already built into the console. It's fucking cracked.
By putting it before the makeup gain instead of after.
Wait, what do you say?
Correctly, which unfortunately this one hasn't. How can you get that wrong, you may ask? By putting it before the makeup gain instead of after. That's how.
Wait, why?
If I set the knob fully dry, the makeup gain still affects it.
Which it shouldn't. Right. So it's a post gain, which is the problem. They literally built it wrong. That's hilarious.
Why?
Why?
If I set the knob fully dry, the makeup gain still affects it. Why? Honestly, this is infuriating.
Oh, I love this, man.
Let me explain why it's a problem. If the compressor is applying any gain reduction at all, that will make the dry side of the mix knob louder than the wet side. This results in two different issues. First of all, any change to the mix knob setting results in an overall loudness change, which then has to be compensated for with the gain knob.
Wait, that's insane. So the compressor just doesn't even work. Oh my god.
This is annoying and frustrating, doubly so because it's so unnecessary, and makes it much harder than it needs to be to judge your mix setting. And second, it means that setting the mix knob to 12 o'clock doesn't give you an equal mix of dry and wet. The dry signal is hotter to start with, so will dominate the sound on this setting. An actual equal mix of dry and wet is going to be somewhere up here. No idea where exactly. And the more gain reduction the compressor is applying, the more all the useful settings will be bunched up at the top end of the knob. Now let's talk about how to do it properly. And I'll allow Softube to partially redeem themselves by using another of their compressors. This is the TubeTech CL1B, and I like it.
I'm about to take a picture of that hoe. Put it in the notes too. I might grab that. I might start putting my notes up for members and like doing videos about the notes and I'll figure it out, bro. I'll figure it out. I'm gonna start doing like members videos and shit like that. Maybe daily, just giving niggas sauce. I gotta tell y'all about a couple of new plays type shit. No, don't mute.
It's full of a unique character.
Damn, you love that thing that you're talking about, Paul Stretch, whatever, bro. You can't stop talking about that hoe.
No.
And you crushed that hoe up and snorted it or something.
Just that if I turn the mix knob fully dry, that output volume knob no longer has any effect. This is perfect. If we're using this knob properly, it will be set to compensate the loudness change from the compression, so that when I bypass the compression, the loudness doesn't really change, and I can properly judge the difference. So by setting the makeup gain correctly, I've also, in effect, calibrated the mix knob. Now the dry and wet signals are roughly equal in loudness to start with, so a 12 o'clock setting actually does result in equal amounts of both. And it's now equally easy to explore more extreme settings where the compressed signal dominates, or more gentle settings where the dry
Come to think of it, Neutron has this exact same problem. Damn.
signal dominates. And you never need to stop to compensate the loudness. So the question is, if Softube can get it right in the TubeTech compressor, how on earth did they manage to get it wrong in the VCA compressor? Now I can hear some of you shouting at your screens that doing it this way around allows you to adjust to the output level without changing the dry-wet mix you've dialed in.
Why would you want a post gain and not a makeup? Not like, why would you need post gain on a compressor? You need makeup, not post gain.
I don't think this is a valid argument, for two reasons. First of all, the makeup gain is not a creative control that you should be using to set the balance.
Exactly. It's not fucking post gain. That's not what a compressor is for.
Mix. That's what your faders are for.
Yes. You don't need post gain on a compressor.
The makeup gain is there purely to compensate for the loudness change caused by the compression, and therefore has a correct setting.
You really do, bro? Hey, it'd be like that, man. I'm just like, you be bringing that hoe up like, I don't even know what you're talking about, to be real with you, but happy for you, gang.
The correct range of settings, as loudness is ultimately subjective. If you set the makeup gain correctly when the mix knob is fully wet, and the mix knob is configured correctly, you won't have to adjust it when you change the dry-wet mix. And anyway, all the soft tube compressors have extra sidebar panels, including one on the right with output gain and automatic level matching. This one in the tube tech allows you to adjust the output gain without changing the dry-wet mix, should you need to do that.
Wait, what?
And anyway, all the soft tube compressors have extra sidebar panels, including one on the right with output gain and automatic level matching. This one in the tube tech allows you to adjust the output gain without changing level matching. This one in the tube tech allows you to adjust the output gain without changing the dry-wet mix, should you need to do that. But this one in the VCA compressor is just a
Wait, why would you need that though?
duplicate of the gain control on the panel. Note that I've picked on soft tubes because they have good examples of both implementations, but I could have chosen many other compressors from other developers. It seems like 50-50 at the moment whether each new compressor I try will get this right or not. And I should probably add that I do like these soft tube compressors a lot in every other way. So my message to developers, if you're putting a dry-wet mix knob on a compressor, or a distortion plugin for that matter, please make sure the dry part of the signal is the unmodified dry signal, and the gain control only affects the wet side.
Let me see something really quickly. I've never thought about VSTs in this way, but it explains so much. So like a lot of VSTs basically have this problem then, because like dry wet, which the thing that this is, the 1566 that this is emulated off of didn't even have dry wet. So now that I think about it, actually, I think this whole might have the same problem. Because like, yeah, like sometimes I'd be like the fully affected signal will be quieter than the one without the effects. And I won't be able to explain why, because that doesn't make sense as a phenomenon. If I'm using this for saturation and I'm pushing input and output into it, it wouldn't make any sense. And the mix is up, but I would have to test it a lot, but that's actually interesting. I literally never thought about that. So you really have to think about that. I mean, you can, it really doesn't matter. It's only if you're a nerd, but it's very interesting. Like it's not just compressors, it's like everything.
All right then, how do we correctly do compression on a send? Here's the trick, and it's actually very simple. I'll solo the compression channel to start with, then bypass the compressor, and if necessary, adjust the makeup gain so that the dry and wet signals are reasonably well loudness matched, just as I would for any normal compressor. I'll make a mental note of how much I changed the gain so that I can compensate with the fader level, and if I take it out of solo, I'm back where I started. Except now, instead of muting the compression channel to assess the difference, I'm instead going to bypass the compressor on the parallel channel. Now I'm still hearing the loudness boost from the parallel channel, but it's only a loudness boost, it's not changing the dynamics at all. And I can now toggle bypass and properly assess the difference. That's all. Hope that helps.
Let me get that. Let me run that back for me real quick. Run that back for me real quick, gang.
Only affects the wet side.
Like I almost had him, but like he lost me right at the end.
All right then, how do we correctly do compression on a send? Here's the trick, and it's actually very simple. I'll solo the compression channel to start with, then bypass the compressor, and if necessary, adjust the makeup gain so that the dry and wet signals are reasonably well loudness matched, just as I would for any normal compressor. I'll make a mental note of how much I changed the gain so that I can compensate with the fader level, and if I take it out of solo, I'm back where I started. Except now, instead of muting the compression channel to assess the difference, I'm instead going to bypass the compressor on the parallel channel. Now I'm still hearing the loudness boost from the parallel channel, but it's only a loudness boost. It's not changing the dynamics at all. And I can now toggle...
what I think he's doing is like turning the effect, the wet, all the way up so that you would only be you would be using the send or the aux channel to or the whatever to mix it in, which is, yeah, I mean, that's what my mentor taught me anyway, which I thought that was like common sense, but like low-key I kind of be forgetting that, right? Because like I still try to parallel process it or like use the mix knobs, but I guess he's saying like if you want to make sure you never mess it up in terms of like balancing it, you would just do it this way. But let me make sure that's what he meant.
Here's the trick, and it's actually very simple.
So he said, homie lost me. I'm not gonna lie, I am not even in the vicinity of where bro is right now, bro. I missed the train. I missed my stop. Got off in the wrong city, wrong state, wrong country. Like I'm like Kevin McAllister from motherfucking Home Alone 2, nigga. I'm out of there, bro.
I'll solo the compression channel to start with, then bypass the compressor.
Right.
And if necessary, adjust the makeup gain so that the dry and wet signals are reasonably well loudness matched, just as I would for any
and the wet knob is literally all the way up right now. So far, so good. That makes sense.
Normal compressor. I'll make a mental note of how much I changed the gain so that I can compensate with the fader level.
That also, I don't do that, but that makes sense if you care that deeply. I haven't gotten to caring that deeply.
And if I take it out of solo, I'm back where I started. Except now, instead of muting the compression channel to assess the difference, I'm instead going to bypass the compressor on the parallel.
Correct, because if you bypass the compressor when it's fully wet, then you will only hear the summation of the two signals and you'll be sure that you're not being confused by like the effects of the compressor, if that makes sense, because the whole point is that you can't tell if it's affecting anything. So I'm trying to think about that. If I want to use Radiator like the best way possible for my melodies, for example, because that's what I've been using it, instead of putting it directly on, I'd want to like parallel process it in a send. So use it like I would use a compressor in a send, and then just put it all the way wet and then mix the signal in like that instead of using the wet knob they have built in there. I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Channel. Now I'm still hearing the loudness boost from the parallel channel, but it's only a loudness boost. It's not changing the dynamics at all. And I can now toggle bypass and properly assess the difference. That's all. Hope that helps. And thanks for watching.
Yeah. I think I get it. I'm gonna have to try that. I don't think do I usually parallel compress? I don't even think I parallel compress for like reverb and convolution and delay a lot, actually. That's like fundamental for my mixing. But like other than that, I'm pretty sure I don't do it a lot, but that's pretty much how I do it. But like, I think he's saying you can get a lot more precision if you think about everything that even remotely affects dynamics in that manner. So like distortion, saturation, compression, even clipping, depending on how you're using it, which is insane. I'm not gonna lie. Wow, that shit kind of blew me. Oh, gave me a lot to think about. I'm gonna be having nightmares about that shit for real. Like it's a wrap. I'm like cooked.